Hey everyone, it's Nick, and in today's video, I'm going to be making music only using Pigments. There was a new update that included a new sample engine inside of Pigments. Yes, that means you can drag and drop samples directly into Pigments and use it as a sampler. They also included a granular synthesis engine, as well as some nice updates to the sequencer and overall performance updates. Let's get started by putting some drum samples into Pigments' new sample engine. So we can get to a default setting in Pigments by going to Template and then choosing Default. You'll hear that the wavetable engine is actually selected first with a sine wave. If we go to the engine type and then select Sample, this is now Pigments' new sample engine. We can choose some preset samples, like they have the piano here. By going to the drop down, they give us a lot of preset samples. But let's try dragging and dropping our own samples. So I've got some Mr. Carmack sounds. He just dropped a new pack on Splice, and I really like this loop. So let's try simply dragging and dropping into the sample engine, and then if I hit C, we can hear that this is the sample played. So Pigment sample engine has three main parts. We've got the main section, which has the granular engine. We'll get into that in one moment. The edit section, which is your traditional sampling parameters like transposition, the root note, playback if you want to reverse it. And the third section is the map section, which will allow you to map up to 6 samples in different modes. But let's just get started with this kick pattern. So I'm going to truncate the sample in the edit section right here. I'm going to transpose it down 1 semitone. We can apply the effects, so we can maybe add some bit crusher to this. All right, for the snare drum, we're going to put in the same loop on a new instance, and we're going to go to the edit section and do the same thing, just really quickly truncate it. I'm going to use the effects engine built into Pigments and give a little reverb. And let's just really shorten that up. Cool, so let's put in a quick beat. So I'll put the snare drum on C3 and I'll put on beat 3 here. And a little early, we'll just Command A and hold Command to turn off the grid, drag it just a little early. And let's make sure the notes are long. For the kick, let's go ahead, play a pattern in loosely. So we'll hit the record and give our count in. 4, 3, 2. Group these, put them into the primary group for my drums, and put the drum pulse on the group. Cool, so now that we have our primary drums in, let's get a melodic element and play around with Pigment's new granular synthesis engine. I'm gonna find a loop from this Carmack pack. I'm curious how this will sound. It's pretty rhythmic as a loop, but the granular synthesis engine is gonna kind of take it into a new direction. So we'll go back to the sample and drag it in. Just be wary, if I'm on wavetable and I drag in a sample, it'll actually just convert the audio to a wavetable, which does not sound the same. So we'll go to the sample. So we could, use it as a traditional sampler. But what I want to do is kind of mess around with this granular synthesis engine. So we're going to turn this on. And granular synthesis in layman's terms means you're going to take small slices of audio, or the grains, and play them back quickly or in different order, but you're essentially just chopping up the sample in a really kind of complex way. So this density is how often it's going to chop the sample. At 1 hertz, it's every second. And we can see the time is how long, or the length of the grain. So density is how often the grain is going to chop, and the time is kind of how long the grains are. As we get higher in the density value, it starts to just turn into one note. Because it's repeated so fast, now our ears kind of perceive that as a new tone or a new timbre. The other big part of this is we can choose the shape of the grain or the envelope of the grain. So right now it's on triangle. Listen to the difference. And the granular synthesis engine also has some of these parameters that allow us to randomize certain elements. So this will randomize the size. Notice the white locators are representing the grains. These three parameters on the left will randomize the start, where it's starting, so the pitch, and kind of the direction if it's going forward or backwards. Like this time, this will be like half the time it's forward, half the time it's backwards. On the right side, we have the random width, so how wide or how much the sound's going to be panned, and random volume of the grains. Kind of makes it more dynamic. Now, the real fun comes when we add Pigments modulators, like these LFOs, the function, the random, the combinate, to these granular synthesis engines. So watch this. I'm going to take envelope 2, so click on envelope 2, and then I'm going to take that and make it modulate the time, and then release back. I'm going to actually have it sustain up. Also, I'm going to try taking LFO 2 and then modulating perhaps the start time. So even just playing those quarter notes, there's so much movement in the sound, it really makes an interesting timbre or texture. Let's just try adding a few of the effects built in. Maybe some overdrive. And I'm going to use maybe just the second LFO, third LFO maybe here, and modulate the overdrive a little bit. Cool, so let's record this. I don't like those last two notes, but we'll keep most of that. So we'll just go in and edit the pattern here. Cool, so let's add in a hi-hat. So we'll put a hi-hat in, we'll Command Tab to Ableton. And if we get a slightly different hat, so if we get a second hat and put it in the B slot, again, we can have up to 6 samples. We go to Map and then go to Round Robin. These will alternate, and we would alternate between all 6 samples. So let's record a hi-hat pattern. And we'll quantize this just by a little bit though, and I kind of want triplet grid, so I'm going to do Command 3. So I'm kind of trying to swing the notes. Cool, let's try to beef up the melodic elements a little bit, and then we'll add some bass. So I'll go to the sample engine, and we'll go back to that Mr. Carmack's folder. So we're in B major. Maybe some other B major sound. So I can use this sample grain start to choose where in the sample we're gonna start. Turn the granular on. That sounds really cool. Taking the, we'll take the envelope here on 2, and actually we'll go the other way. We'll start from very dense, so like very fast grains, to slow. Oh, and I need to make sure this is slower. Ooh, I really like this sound of. So I'm gonna assign, this is crazy, I'm gonna assign envelope 3 to the attack time of envelope 2. We'll just go to envelope 3 here and start it this way. What that's doing, again, is it's taking the density and decreasing it, but it's kind of decreasing in this kind of exponential manner because I'm using an envelope on another envelope's attack time. Notice it starts slow and then moves fast. Yeah, it'll be a nice little response in that space here. So let's try to record it. 4, 3, 2, 1. Cool, so let's add in a bass to the sample engine now. We'll go ahead, find one of the basses here. And let's make sure we have the right track arm. And we can add a little effects. We can add a little, maybe distortion. Go through the presets, a little subtle. So we'll go with those 3 notes right there. So let's record 4, 3, 2, 1. Cool, so for the last element of this, I'm gonna use a pad preset. I mean, we've only used the sample engine so far, and Pigments does have tons of great presets using the wavetable and analog engines. So we'll just find this, I like this pad. We're kind of settled into E flat minor here. Cool, so we'll go to the sequence mode and we'll play around with the scale. Let's go to natural minor, and we don't need to randomize it, but what's really fun is we can just kind of select the scale degrees of the sequence and it jumps around as you hold one note. We can also play with the gate length, the slide. We'll leave it on chromatic because we're only going to use the 5th, but we can play around with the scale notes here. Let's record just that idea. 1, 2, ready, and. Cool, so I really high passed that. So it's just kind of a texture on top, probably take it, and then maybe auto pan it. Awesome, so those were some of the new features in the Pigments update. Again, this is actually a free update. If you already own Pigments or you're on rent to own, you can just update. And if you're not, we have it available for rent to own. The link will be at the top right of the screen. We hope you have fun playing around with the new sample engine. It really unlocks new possibilities with this synth and really makes it more versatile than ever. Please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'll be releasing production videos and tutorials weekly. And as always, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Until next time, see you later.